One of the most common questions that you get as a rabbi is, why did you want to be a rabbi? Especially early on when you're telling everyone you're going to go to rabbinical school, you get it a lot. I think people are just wondering why you're going to do this to yourself. And so I got asked that a lot, especially as I was first starting rabbinical school. And I guess I was maybe getting asked it a little too much. I started to get a little bit of an attitude with my answer, get a little spunky. And so instead of giving the actual answer, I started saying, well, one night I was sleeping outside using a rock as a pillow, and there was a ladder, and there were angels. And yeah, right? Okay, so I stopped giving that as an answer because often by that point in the story, people would be like, wow. And then I realized that they believed me and I felt really bad, like I was being very mean. Because it was so obvious, to me and to many of you, clearly, that that's the story of Jacob's ladder. It's a very well-known story. It's very common to many, many Jews and people to think about and talk about. It's clearly, I talked about it, the other rabbi talked about it, our rabbi in training, bar mitzvah, talked about it. It takes place this week in Vayetze, and it's one of those stories that I know so well that I don't generally bother reading it that closely, because I know what's going to happen. But the advantage of working with B'nai Mitzvah on their Divrei Torah is you read the Parsha very closely with them. It forces you to do it, and I noticed something particularly that stood out to me when I was reading. Now, we always think of that whole part as a dream sequence, right? I know I did, at least. We have Jacob's on the run. He's running away from his brother who wants to kill him. He sleeps outside using the rock as a pillow, and he has a dream, and in that dream there's angels going up and down a ladder, and there's God, and they have a conversation. But if you really read it, if you really look at the words, especially in the Hebrew, it's not actually that clear that it is a dream. The Torah says, he put the stones under his head, and he dreamt, and behold, a ladder stretched down to the ground. And the angels were going up and down it, and behold, God was standing next to him. And it goes on, they have a conversation, God will be with Jacob, etc., etc. And the Torah says, and Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Achen yesh Adonai b'makom hazeh, and God is in this place. Not, wow, I just had a dream about God. Not, wow, God came to me in a dream. It was, God is here. So I ask you, did Jacob dream it, or was it real? Now, having read through this many times, I can tell you, I don't think it's clear. But I do think it's purposeful. I think the Torah is intentionally blurring the line between the dream world and the physical. Because what starts as a dream becomes increasingly real, at least it seems so. Not I dreamt, but it happened. And in the end, Jacob tells us himself, God is here. Dream or physical reality? Now, like I said in the weekly video teaser, like most rabbis, I am pretty nerdy. And when I realized that what the Torah was doing here in drawing this distinction, or really a lack of distinction, it reminded me very much of Harry Potter. Now, no one can accuse me of spoilers. That last book came out about 10 years ago. But if you have not read the last book, plug your ears, or I don't know, wait out in the little vestibule area and we'll catch you up later. So, just saying. At the end of the last book, there's a big battle scene. Big battle, good versus evil. And, not spoiler alert, serious. Harry dies. Okay. And he goes to what is essentially limbo. They don't call it that, but it's limbo. He's in this in-between death and life place. And Dumbledore, who's been dead for like a book and a half, he's also there. He's like the headmaster. And he offers Harry a choice. Do you want to go back to the fight, go back to life, or move on? Harry chooses life. He wants to go and fight against evil, but right before he goes back to life, just before, he suddenly turns to Dumbledore and he says, tell me one last thing. Is this real, or has it been happening in my head? And Dumbledore says, Of course it's happening in your head, but why on earth should that mean that it is not real? We are so accustomed to thinking in terms of black and white. If I can see it and I can feel it, I can touch it and taste it and smell it, it's real. This is real because I can feel it and experience it physically, it's real. But what J.K. Rowling was saying and what the Torah is underlining is that spiritual or emotional reality is no less real than physical reality. It's hard to imagine, ironically, and it's certainly more comfortable dealing solely with the physical, the stuff that we can see and experience around us. But there's more to life than all of this, all this stuff. Dumbledore says it very plainly. Of course this is happening in your head, but why does it mean it's not real? And the Torah is very clear. Jacob may have been dreaming, but God was there. That was real. It might have existed only in his head, but it was real. But if you think about it, it's not even that weird. Lots of stuff exists only in our heads or in our hearts, like love. There's physical evidence for love, of course. We feel hugs, we hear I love yous, we see gifts, we get gifts and things. There's a physical aspect to love, sure, but love itself actually only exists in here. That's where it really is. And peace, the peace that exists inside of you, the feeling of contentedness and of fullness and completeness and wholeness, when your needs are met and those you loved, their needs are met and they're taken care of, and you feel peace in your heart. It's not physical, but it's real. And then there's God. Now, Jews, we are really good at the physical parts of religion. We're really good at ritual, and ritual is about physicality, eating the foods and lighting the candles and singing the songs and shaking the lulavs. But at least as equally important is the other reality of Judaism, this spiritual reality. It's no less real just because you can't touch it or smell it or taste it. It's no less real because its realness is rooted in the spiritual. The feeling you get when a prayer on the page mirrors what's inside of you, it's real, not physical. And the ecstatic joy that we feel when we bring a new baby into covenant with God and the Jewish people, it's real, it's just spiritual. And the weighty knowledge that you are the latest link in a thousands-year-old tradition, that weight is real. It's just not physical. And there's God. Feeling close to God, feeling that God is close to you, that is surely real and it is surely not physical. It's spiritual. And now when people ask me why I became a rabbi, the first part of my answer is I have always felt close to and had a relationship with God. And I used to be really hesitant to say that. I think I was doing that snotty answer of the ladder and the angels because I was so hesitant to give my actual answer. I didn't think people would understand me if I said I had a close personal relationship with God. Didn't think people would take me seriously because I can't prove it to you, I can't show you. Here it is. You just have to believe me. But I also just kind of have to believe me, And it's hard. Spiritual reality is really hard. It's harder than physical because it comes down to faith. But so does a lot of other great stuff, like love. How do you know love is real? You feel it, and you know it, and you know it's true. Peace is real, and it's real when you know it's real, and you know it's real when you feel it. Ultimately, you know it here and here, absent of any physicalness. And it's the same with God. Any spiritual experience you might have, you know if it's real. If it's real for you, and there are people that it's not something they dabble in, and that's cool, that's fine too. I'm just saying that if you know when you know, you know. You feel it. You feel it in your bones. I know that for myself, I cannot live without either one of these. Living squarely in only one reality or the other doesn't work for me. I would feel robbed. I feel like I'm missing something if I only have one or the other. And luckily, Judaism gives us both. Physical in Judaism is myriad. We eat latkes on Hanukkah, and we light Shabbat candles, and we sing these prayers. We donate money to the needy. We stand up for justice. And if Judaism was only experienced in the spiritual, you'd miss all the richness, all the beauty of being in a physical religion, and Judaism surely is. But there's also so much spiritual realness out there for us that's possible to feel and know in our religion. There's spiritual joy and the beauty and the weight. And for some, God. The many, many ways that God can be experienced and known, constant and yet ever-changing. I'm not saying that you have to experience or believe these things the way I do. And I'm definitely not saying that you have to experience or believe them the way other people tell you that you must. I am saying that a lot of beauty exists, and to not cut yourself off from experiencing any of it. And just because something exists in your head or your heart doesn't mean that it's not real. Shabbat Shalom.